Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Pam Jackson, and I'm the worship associate this morning, and I'm a member of the board.
Vice President.
Welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's in-person and online worship. Whether today is your first time here or you've been coming for years, we're so glad you are with us. We are growing a community that transforms lives through the power of love. Our mission calls us to celebrate diversity, encourage spiritual growth, and promote social responsibility while we travel on and care for the earth. A special welcome to those at home who are joining us on Zoom today. If you're attending for the first time, please go to our website and fill out the welcome card so we can know more about you. And I have a few announcements this morning. You may have noticed a row of seats reserved at the back of the sanctuary. This is an innovation to ensure people running late have a place to sit. Those in our Zoom sanctuary this morning are invited to stay on after worship. Reverend Tara will join you for virtual coffee hour. And from the Social Justice Committee, today here at church, another opportunity to play a role in encouraging democracy. Come to rooms 7 and 9 down the hall after the service to write letters to young voters under the age of 35. We had a great turnout last week. We would love your help today. Come for 15 minutes or stay for the hour. Now we invite you to, and Reverend Tara has one more announcement.
Sorry. I also hope that you will plan to stay after worship next Sunday for an all-ages outdoor gathering, which is the first piece of a larger collaborative project being launched by the team who attended the BTS Center's climate retreat this past June. That team is Angie Dirks, Barb Murray, Patricia Ellen, supported by me, and I participated as well. And this project has the goal of helping to facilitate the deepening of this community's connection with the 6.5 acres of land that we are on. So for those who join us next Sunday, after worship, you'll grab coffee or tea and a snack, and after 15 minutes or so of chatting and connecting with each other, we'll gather outside under the tree, where we'll introduce the theme of creation. And then those who want and can do movement will take a land walk, a guided contemplative land walk, guided by Polly, Tim, Patricia, and Angie. And those who prefer to sit will stay with Barb and myself, and we'll do a circle discussion having to do with art and storytelling around the topic of creation. So I hope you will stay, invite a friend, and we look forward to having you.
Now we invite you all to take this opportunity to silence your cell phones so we can be fully present to one another. After the service, please grab a cup of coffee or tea in the kitchen window and stay for conversation, or head down to the end of the long hallway to join a group for the brown bag lunch. Those on Zoom will stay on, we hope, and connect with Reverend Tara today. And now let us center our hearts and minds with the ringing of the chimes.
Good morning again. For those I haven't met before, my name is Reverend Tara. I use they, them pronouns, and I am the minister here at Allen Ave, UU Church, A2U2 for short. This morning in worship, we are reflecting on power, who has it, how we use it, and why it matters. After the lamp lighting ritual, and actually it looks like we don't have our lamp, which Emily will get. Thank you. After the lamp lighting ritual, our children and youth will join Emily down the hall for religious education, where they will create this year's RE covenant. Our 4th through 6th graders will gather later this afternoon for Our Whole Lives, where they'll also build a covenant, reflect on sexuality and values, and talk about healthy relationships. You can find out what else is happening after service today in your order of service insert. As we settle now into our time together, a time set apart, made sacred by our gathering, know that whoever you are and wherever you are on your life's journey, I am so glad you are here. Come into this place of community, of challenge, of renewal, where we imperfect, beloved, kindred souls seek out the always present opportunity to be changed. It is good to be together. Come and be welcome. You are joyfully called to worship.
As we light our sanctuary chalice this morning, those joining on Zoom are invited to light a chalice or candle near you to connect us more deeply with one another. We kindle a flame of power, illuminating the holy in each of our faces. We recognize in the flame a passionate commitment to our shared faith. We are held and carried from day to day, week to week, in the shining of the light. This flame is mine as well as yours. We are brought together on this day, called to growth, to expansion, within its glow.
Our community candle this morning is lit in celebration of the fall equinox. We honor today the balance of dark and light, night and day. May we not forget the lessons of this earth, our home, as we move together as one through time and through space. Will you take a breath with me? Our opening hymn this morning is 347 in your gray hymnal and up on the screen, Gather the Spirit. Dale will play it through once, and then you are invited to rise in body or in spirit as we join our voices in song. Where's my old woman? There you are. So our time for all ages today is a story. I am the narrator. Emily is the young boy, obviously. And Mike is the old woman. Oh, a wise woman, sorry. There once was a wise woman who lived by herself near a small village. Rumor had it that she could always accurately predict when the rains would come, or help heal a sick child with herbs, or calm angry neighbors and help them to resolve their fights and arguments. People came from all over the land to meet with her and to seek her advice on matters both small and great. Her reputation was such that it was said she was never wrong. Not ever. Some of the children of the village didn't believe that it was possible to always be right. Surely she could not know everything. They decided to test her knowledge. First, they asked her to answer questions about the planets, the animals, and the world. And no matter how hard the question, she always answered correctly. The children were amazed at her knowledge and learning, and most were ready to stop testing the wise woman. However, one boy was determined to prove that the old woman couldn't possibly know everything. So, hatching a devious scheme, he told all his friends to meet him at the wise woman's home the following afternoon so he could prove for once and for all that she was a faker. All through the next day, he hunted for a bird. Finally, he caught a small songbird in a net. Holding it behind his back so no one could see what was in his hands, he walked triumphantly to the wise woman's home.
Old woman, come and show us how wise you are.
The woman walked calmly to the door.
May I help you?
You say you know everything. Prove it. What am I holding behind my back?
The old woman thought for a moment. She could make out the faint sound of a bird's wings rustling.
I do not say I know everything. Is this on?
There we go.
I do not say. It's very on. I do not say I know everything, for that would be impossible. However, I do believe you're holding a bird in your hands.
The boy was furious. How could the woman possibly have known he had a bird? Thinking quickly, he came up with a new scheme. He would ask the woman whether the bird was alive or dead. If the woman replied alive, he would crush it with his hands and prove her wrong. If she answered dead, on the other hand, he would pull the living bird from behind his back and allow it to fly away. Either way, he would prove his point, and the wise woman would be discredited.
Very good. It is a bird. But tell me, is the bird I'm holding alive or dead?
The wise woman paused for a long moment while the boy waited with anticipation for his opportunity to prove her wrong. Again, the woman spoke calmly.
The answer, my young friend, is in your hands. The answer is in your hands.
The boy realized that the wise woman had once again spoken correctly and truthfully. The answer was indeed in his own hands. feeling the bird feebly moving in his hands as it tried to escape his grasp. He felt suddenly very ashamed. The answer was in his hands. Slowly and gently, he brought his hands to the front of his body. Looking into the eyes of the delicate bird, he apologized, and he opened his hands to let her go free. The end.
In a few moments, some of us will leave the sanctuary to enjoy religious education programming, but first I invite our lamplighter, Calvin, to join me in the pulpit. A lamplighter is entrusted to transfer the light of the sanctuary chalice to the lamp and then go forth to RE spaces where they will light the chalices there. This one. I invite those going to RE to follow the lamplighter as we carry the flame, expanding our sacred space.
Our words of prayer this morning include words of confession and forgiveness, written by Cole Arthur Riley in her book, Black Liturgies, Prayers, Poems, and Meditations for Staying Human. Join me in taking a breath. Spirit of power, we confess that we have wielded power against one another as opposed to using our power in protection of each other. In a world of so much chaos and unpredictability, we have become feverish for any semblance of control, even if that control is used to exclude or oppress others. We have pulled triggers, sent drones. We have sat by while powerful men wreak havoc on the world's most vulnerable. And our own daily power we have used to maintain the status quo. We have stolen the bodily agency of others. We have dismissed the voices of our children and the elderly. For all that we've done or witnessed done, we are truly sorry. Forgive us and have mercy on us that we might know an empowered life, grounded in our own voices, without suffocating others. And may your soul receive this rest. The love that weaves itself into the very earth around us, so too reveals all that it has relinquished control over. Allow the spirit of life to restore your humanity to you as we gather our collective imaginations to fashion and nurture new ways of being together. Breathe in. There is power in this breath. Breathe out. There is agency in this body. Breathe in. God, tear down the tyrants. Breathe out. Lift up the healers. Amen.
Now is the time in our service when we engage in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts support the ministries of this congregation and our work in the broader community. Each week, 1/3 of our offering is given away to a local nonprofit organization doing work to advance our shared values in the world. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Family Promise, whose mission is to help low-income families and families experiencing homelessness achieve sustainable independence. Donations can be made now as the basket is passed through the donate button on our website, or if you are a member on Breeze, remembering to make note that your gift is for Share the Plate. If you are visiting us for the first time, please let us know, please let us know, please know that your presence is your gift to us. At this time, our offering will be collected and gratefully received. This morning's reading comes from the 5th chapter of the book, What It Takes to Heal, by Prentice Hemphill. They write, quote, "The force that brings about political change is power. Martin Luther King Jr. once defined power as the relative ability to achieve purpose. The more power we have in any given situation, the easier it is to do what we intend. The less power, the harder it becomes to exercise choice over our lives and what happens in them. Power is necessary for anything to happen, though many of us are raised to fear it. Because of how we've seen people use the power we give them, we assume that power is only domination and exclusion, not generosity and protection. The test of power, how we show what guides it, is in how we wield it. To me, the root of any power is in the body, specifically in our ability to be embodied in a way that organizes ourselves and ourself to act out a vision. Power is not only an individual's expression, it is first felt in the alignment of our own bodies, then multiplied and amplified in our syncopation, in our coordination with one another. We cultivate power in ourselves and we build power when we work together.
How many of you have negative associations with the word power? How about positive associations? Power. Positive associations with the word. Okay. As was said in our reading, many of us are raised to fear power because of how we've seen people use the power we give them. We assume, many of us, that power is only domination and exclusion, not generosity and protection. Fair enough. In many ways, the history of this country is a 250-year story of the exercise in the abuse of power. We have seen time and time again what it looks like when humans exert power over one another throughout history, but also in more recent years, months, days, in our own country, in our own communities, in some, our own families. To understand the ways in which power is used and abused is to understand why the world is the way it is and how we can engage effectively to change it. It's hard to talk about power, and I understand why. It's hard and it's uncomfortable, just like privilege is hard and uncomfortable to talk about. if our understanding of power and privilege is that they are inherently bad, that they are held and wielded by the other, then it becomes very difficult to name that we too have them. So let's talk about it. I think power itself is actually neutral. It's force, it's energy, and it's what we do with power that matters. And there are different ways we can engage with power. We can assert power over one another. We can build power with one another. Or we can ignore it, pretend we don't have it, and in turn cede it to those who abuse it. Popular social researcher Brené Brown describes power over as working from the premise that power is finite, that it has to be hoarded and protected. People, she says, who use power over are likely driven by fear. And she describes the other kind of power, power with, as a power that becomes infinite and expands when it is shared with others. Power over leverages fear to divide, destabilize, and devalue decency. Power with leverages connection and empathy to unite and to stabilize. Power over gives people someone to blame for their discomfort, preferably someone who looks, thinks, or acts or sounds different than they do. Power with normalizes discomfort and moves away from shame and blame toward accountability and meaningful change. Power over incites hatred and violence with persistent dehumanizing language and policies. Power with centers connection and humanity with empathy-driven agendas, policies, and values. We see and hear and read about a whole lot of power over in the news. It's why so many of us have to set limits on how much and when and how we consume it. Less frequently, though, is power with lifted up, highlighted, celebrated, but I think it is just as present. And it is absolutely, abundantly clear that the way that we are called to use power by our Unitarian Universalist values is to use power with. Power that is expansive when shared, that leverages connection and empathy, power that normalizes discomfort and emphasizes accountability, that centers connection and humanity. The power of collective wisdom, of shared leadership, resources, and vision. Coalition building, grassroots organizing efforts, group decision-making, and so much more. The practice of our faith is to gather, to do community together. And in doing so, we build power that is grounded in love. And it is good. But we haven't always, we don't always, and we won't always get it right. Our values are aspirational, as are our covenants and the promises we make to one another. Not because we don't try, we actually try really hard, but because we're human. And what is an absolutely guaranteed part of being human is that we don't get it right all the time, even a lot of the time. Sometimes we exert power over one another. Other times we are complicit and fail to use the power we have when it is needed most. In a conversation I had recently in one of my volunteer roles within our denomination, a UU young adult of color expressed to me their disappointment at times with our faith movement. In particular, they said to me, "I wish Unitarian Universalists were braver." I wish Unitarian Universalists were braver too. I wish I were braver too. Sometimes I think that Unitarian Universalists, specifically those with gender, race, class, and or economic privilege, get complicit, choose silence, fail to act on our values or speak out against injustice, or even name an imbalance of power when we see it in our communities because we're afraid of screwing up, of stirring the pot, of pissing people off. Or perhaps we haven't owned the fact that we have power to begin with, that we have power to wield, or we pretend we don't have power over when we do, because we're desperately afraid that giving it up will mean we won't be included, or that we'll be condemned, or even worse, left behind. Yet, failing to own the power we do have, failing to use it to build collective momentum toward equity and justice, is precisely how we allow the dominant culture, white supremacy, patriarchy, elitism, to deepen its roots and assure the continuation of leadership that exerts power over. Building on the work of Angela Sims, my colleague, the Reverend Julian Soto, asks in the chapter they contributed to a new book about authentic and diverse UU religious leadership, they ask, how have power dynamics shaped our Unitarian Universalist values rather than the other way around? How have power dynamics shaped our Unitarian Universalist values rather than the other way around? They cite white supremacy culture and patriarchy as an example, reflecting that they will act and enact systemic corrections in order to maintain power. Which is why, if we are not using our power against them, using our power to build an alternative way of being together, we allow our movement to be shaped by systemic forces that counter what we believe in. When those with countercultural values don't use their power, the dominant culture wins. This is what happens when we don't talk about power. And this is not a new phenomenon within our communities, and Unitarian Universalism is not immune to it. What happened in our UU movement in the late 1960s, what's known as the empowerment controversy, is a great example of a time we have struggled to talk about power. Longtime Unitarian Universalists, some perhaps of you, remember the vital role that our congregations played in the civil rights movement. Many Unitarian Universalist elders marched in Selma and remember engaging fiercely in the fight for desegregation and against the discrimination of Black Americans. The main lecture at our Unitarian Universalist annual National Gathering General Assembly in 1966 was given by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. himself. What we often forget, or what is harder to talk about, to name, is how Unitarian Universalism, white UUs in particular, handled the Black Power movement. What was left out entirely of MLK's lecture that night was any challenge for white liberals to think about privilege, systemic racism, power, or identity. MLK was palatable for white Unitarian Universalists, but Stokely Carmichael and Malcolm X were, for many, a bridge too far. The late 60s and early 70s were painful years in our movement, with the same arguments between those who wanted Black inclusion versus those who wanted Black self-determination happening more broadly, reflected in our own faith movement. Relationships were fractured. Promises of institutional support were left unfulfilled. People left and didn't come back. In the words of Black UU historian Mark Morrison Reed, underlying it all were competing needs for power and control. In the words of Julian Soto, this is the complex background of Unitarian Universalism's relationship to power. While it's easy for Unitarian Universalists to understand concepts like civility and politeness, those alone can never transform injustice into equity or compliance into liberation. The problem wasn't that people disagreed. The problem wasn't that people disagreed at all. That's what people do. The problem was that they were not equipped to talk honestly and openly about power. And when we can't effectively talk about power, grapple with the ways that we are all shaped and formed by it, we cease to be effective in our justice making. A fractured movement is what happens when we don't talk about power, when we deny that we have it, yet are afraid of losing it, when we're willing to share it, but only under certain circumstances. Our faith tradition and the values that we hold dear, hold most dear, call us to name power where and when we see it, to cultivate power in community, to harvest power in the name of liberation and change, to redistribute power from the center to the margins, and to use our power in service of our values, our vision, our faith. This congregation is well aware that November is drawing near. Many of you have shared your hope, your fear, and your exhaustion with me. I share all of it. Many of you have been gathering to get out the vote, writing letters and registering voters, call and text banking, reading up on ballot initiatives, and so much more. I see you building and cultivating power with one another, within and beyond these walls, and it is beautiful. We all know that elections are not the be-all, end-all, and yet still, you are building and cultivating power that will guide you through the work to come, the work that begins on November 6th and carries forward from there. It is a beautiful thing to watch grassroots power form and shape and move and grow. It is a beautiful thing. Because it's easy to succumb to despair, to cynicism, to rest in our privilege and opt out, to not vote because of a single issue we disagree with, giving our vote to those who wield power over, failing to find connection and compromise in the common pieces amongst the multitudes we all contain. But so much is on the line. So much is on the line. And we are called. You are called. like the boy and the bird and the wise woman's words. The answer, the power, my friend, is in your hands. The answer and the power are in your hands. And so this morning, I want to leave you with the prophetic words of Michael Eric Dyson, pastor and professor of sociology at Georgetown University. The dictators of this world, the unjust leaders, the oppressors, are not our final or ultimate problem. The problem is instead allowing hopelessness to steal our joyful triumph before we work hard enough to achieve it. May we be so empowered, and may we make it so. Blessed be. Our closing hymn this morning is number 20 in your gray hymnal and up on the screen, Be Thou My Vision. Dale will play through once, and then you are invited to rise in spirit or body as we sing together. In our most glorious capacity, I believe we're vessels for each other's healing and liberation. We're here to empower one another, even as those of us with greater privilege are called to show up for those furthest from power. That's why of all the things faith can mean, to me it means believing in us, to repair, to connect, to hold one another up as we carry the whole forward. There's no God that will rescue us, no magical thinking that will restore the world or manifest it in the universe. I cast my lot with you, with us, with all that's possible, through no extraordinary power but our own. Our worship has ended, and our service begins. Go in power and go with love.